Hello, my name is Fukami, and I'm not talking about Flash basics as part of it, but it's actually about testing and exploiting Flash applications. I have much more slides than I can actually really use here, but a couple of slides are there just for having a full overview of the topic. So I will skip stuff. To my agenda, I start with a short introduction. The whole definition part I will skip and will give some security-related basics on Flash itself and ActionScript. I will show how to exploit the Flash movies and some exploits and attacks using Flash. And at the end I have some notes about AIR. About myself, I'm working as a security consultant for Sektion 1 in Cologne. We are doing web security assessment. I'm interested in web security since '98 when I got rooted by an Apache exploit. And yeah, that was a point where I started, and I had a couple of other things in the past, but yeah, I'm back to web security now. I started a project a couple of months ago called FlashSec, which is mainly a documentation project about Flash and all the abilities, abilities Flash has, and we are developing methodologies to do auditing on those stuff. The main motivation for the talk and for the topic was that I was asked to audit some Flash applications, and at that time I actually didn't know how to audit Flash at all, and it took a couple of months to get my head around this topic. The problem was that Flash is there since like 10 years or so, but there was not much knowledge in the security community about it, which changed in the last months because there are at least 2 or 3 people now having a deeper look at it. One thing which was very, very interesting for me was that there are a couple of very, very funny and very weird vectors in Flash. Some of them are fixed, but there are still a lot of funny things which can lead to exploitation. Flash is used in like 80 or 90% of all browsers. Just a short question. Who of you are using Flash on a regular basis? Only 2, yeah? Okay. The interesting thing is that only 30% of all users using Flash have the most recent version. The older versions have a lot of security problems in the sense of buffer overflows. Yeah, and there are a lot of things which you can do with Flash, actually. So, yeah, let's start with a talk. Another definitions I won't explain. They just remain here for documentation. There are a couple of acronyms which I use, but I will explain them when they are there. So the funny thing is that there was not that much public research on Flash. The first thing was at August 2002, where someone found out that there was iron security about this getURL function where you could execute JavaScript code. I won't go through all those stuff, but if you see, it's like 2003 is one, and then it's 2006, so there's actually, it was not much going on during the whole time, the last couple of, like the last year, there were much more. Let's start with some basics. What is Flash? Flash is a development environment for building rich media applications. The SWF specs are weird in the sense of you are allowed to read the specs, but if you read the specs, you are not allowed to build a renderer. So stuff like Nash, for example, has to do a clean room design without reading the SWF specs. Flash is a mixture between graphical objects, text, movies, and ActionScript. And it can be used standalone or embedded in HTML. The principles are very, very similar to Ajax. So you only load a subset of stuff or data and only load all the other stuff once. And it's very, very popular for broadcasting videos and audio. And it's used for advertisement stuff and stuff like that. Every one of you know those YouTube stuff, for example. Flex is an SDK and an IDE for developing cross-platform rich internet applications. It's basically Flash 9 with some interface libraries, and you can have a standalone IDE or a plugin for Eclipse. And there are also some command line tools to build SVF files from ActionScript from command line. And the SDK itself will be open source or is open sourced, and the whole Flex Builder IDE will still remain proprietary and commercial by Adobe. And this won't change. The latest development of Adobe called AIR, Adobe Integrated Runtime, it's an idea to have its possibility of using internet applications also for offline use. It uses Flash, Flex, HTML. It uses WebKit from Apple, the ActionScript VM called Tamarine, which is developed by Adobe and the Mozilla Foundation. And for the storage, it's using SQLite. And the first app released by Adobe based on AIR called AMP, an Adobe Media Player. It's Adobe is AIR is beta in the moment, and the final will be by end of the year. Here are a couple of AIR applications, so you don't need to have like the usual browser sort of layout. You can also use stuff which looks completely different. And this is Adobe Media Player, which only renders Flash video. Flash movies are timeline based. It's from the history where it comes from. Every movie is referenced by its level number. So you can access a level by its underlying object, and level 0 is always the first movie which is loaded, and you can load the other movies while you're running the first one. in ActionScript 2, which is Flash 7 and 8, SVF 7 and 8, there was a thing called underline root that was some sort of global variable scope. I will have on that. I will talk on the topic a bit later, but this is done on at ActionScript 3 because it's very weird and Flash doesn't use it anymore. The general abilities of Flash. Flash can file different types of requests, like binary and HTTP requests, can load and execute external Flash movies and other data like XML. It has native codecs for audio and video data. And it's also possible to render HTML inside text fields. And it also executes JavaScript when embedded in HTML. The interpreter itself works that way. There's a browser. The file is inside an HTML page, and the HTML page and the bytecode interpreter talk via the Live Connect interface, and it just executes the SWF bytecode. ActionScript is an ECMA language, and I only know Flash, which is using ActionScript. And it was designed for doing 2D animations in the beginning, but now it has much more abilities. Yeah, and the latest development, as I already mentioned, is by Mozilla and Adobe, called Tamarine. There are a couple of differences between version 2 and version 3 of ActionScript. But most of the Flash applications you can find on the web are ActionScript 2 based, so most of the vectors I will show apply to them. The biggest differences are related to security. On one hand, a couple of vectors are gone from ActionScript 2, but there are a couple of things you can do with ActionScript 3 now, stuff like sockets, and in Air you have even file system access. Functions for reading and writing data on the file system. The ActionScript security model was implemented in version 7. It was mainly designed to control and block interaction among external movies. And it has a sandbox model. It also handles controls the interaction between the browser and the movie, and also all stuff related to external communication. Shared objects, from my point of view, they are the most ugly vector in Flash because it's a kind of persistent cookie. It's up to 100K per host name, and it doesn't get deleted on when you exit your browser. I just have a little demo on that. Just a quite easy one. When I just have something and save it in one browser and use, for example, this is an RSS reader called Vienna, I have the same value here, yeah? And if I use another browser, sorry, if I use a browser like hey, what's up? For example, Firefox. So why is it the problem? Because many people say, okay, I have one browser for like my usual stuff, and for my other stuff I use another browser. And so all the tracking I have by cookies and stuff don't apply to them. But if someone uses Flash cookies, chat objects, they are used by all browsers the same way, which I find a very, very bad thing. There's another special thing in Flash called local connections. The idea of local connections is you have two Flash movies and they are able to talk to each other. It uses shared memory instead of RPC or sockets. And you can even talk between different applications through that. For example, you have one browser and another, you can do another communication between one browser and another. Just to show that. The receiver and doesn't work. Okay. Hey. Okay. Okay, I just showed it in one. So I can send from one part to another. If you see, it's like another domain is test 1, one is test 2. So I send data from one domain to another. And since there's this strange vector with executing JavaScript, main. So what I can do, with like local connections is having domain access between two movies and can like do like cross-site scripting to another domain. And I can even do that between different running applications using Flash. And there's also a bug in local connections where you can determine what other Flash applications are running and using local connections. So it's a kind of application fingerprinting you can do based on local connections. The way to embed Flash is done by the embed tag or object in embed. But you can also load Flash movies direct via the border location bar or inside an iframe. And browsers like Firefox, they auto-generate an HTML page around it. The communication between SWF and the browser can be, you can tell a movie that to allow him to talk to the page where it is loaded from. I have another little example for that. Oops. So it's the external interface. So I have a piece of action script. This part is action script. This part is JavaScript from the page. So I can send data in that direction, and I can send, like from ActionScript to HTML, and I can send data back. So quite easy thing. Yeah. And the other funny thing is that you can load a Java VM when, I just preload Java if you load Flash movie. The variable handling works that way that the type checks are only during compile time, and during runtime they're only typecasts. Also, private methods only get checked during compile time. They can be overwritten during runtime in some cases. A variable is an object, and the scopes and variable definitions are analog to the ECMA standard, and stuff like prototype are the same like in JavaScript. The possibility to apply variables to a Flash movie, there's three ways to do that. One is to do it via a query string. Just a usual get or post. The other thing is to apply a param called flash vars inside HTML, or load variables inside the Flash movie itself. The funny thing is that ActionScript 2 has something like register globals known from PHP. So every variable in ActionScript 2 which is supplied to the ActionScript 2 based movie is inside the variable scope. So in this case, for example, the variable language gets overwritten and overwrites this part. So by calling it that way, you can load an external XML file. In ActionScript 3, there's a loader info parameters object, so you are not able anymore in ActionScript 3 to do stuff like that. The security sandbox model allows movies to share or separate the runtime environment. So movies in the same sandbox share everything, like variables, objects, classes, and you can allow it during runtime by applying the system security allow domain function, and so you can override stuff like the static ActionScript function or giving access to the whole sandbox. The cross-domain policies are pretty much like in other environments. So in this example, the first two URLs get access, the third don't, because it's another protocol. This one has a different port and this one has a different name. But you can apply, supply a cross-domain policy file where you can tell that a movie is allowed to load the data from another domain and to what ports it can connect. And as I said, you can, and you can supply system security load policy files. So if you want to have the cross-domain policy on another location than the default, you can use that. The global security settings of the player are only available on an Adobe website. And yeah, that's the only way you can have your global settings. That's pretty weird. And for every single domain, you can do that on the domain where the movie resides on. Okay, I have to. The most interesting thing for Flash are the client-side attacks. I will actually just show them. It's like get URL where you can supply a JavaScript code and even can do stuff like DOM injections. Usually, there are many Flash games out there. It's very, very easy to exploit them usually because you just look what they send to the server and you just do manipulation on the parameters. So you get the score you want. Cross-site flashing is the idea to load a movie when the sandbox allows that, and you can get and set variables. The funny thing is, every time you have an unexpected browser to SWF communication, it's very dangerous because you can steal data in both directions. These are a couple of tools I won't talk about it. There's a very nice thing in Flash called AS function. It's a kind of pseudo protocol to use pointers inside ActionScript to call an ActionScript function. That's there because you can have HTML fields, text fields, and so you can link to a ActionScript function. Boring. Okay, these are the ways how you can supply malicious code into text fields. For example, just doing a normal href with JavaScript code, or directly with a ActionScript function. And you can even call native static ActionScript functions like system security allow domain. the funny thing is this Flash movie is vulnerable to this parameter button text, and in newer versions you will get something like a security sandbox violation. This action script, now it's mainly some JavaScript code inside an action script class. And if you compile this action script with an older version, like with version 7, you get an cross-site scripting. Why? I'm not sure why it works. I think it's because that ActionScript applies the security policy of the movie, which is called by the parent object. It's a very stupid idea in my point of view. The other thing which I just showed before is like you can supply in JavaScript code inside an image tag, because it only checks for the file extension, and so it gets executed when you do it that way. The acronym PNDF stands for potentially dangerous native functions. These are all functions inside ActionScript 2 which allow to call AS function pseudo protocol handler. And this example, that's a load movie functions. Load movie function which does the same thing. You just call the ActionScript handler, just apply the URL and just append the comment signs. The functions are load variable, also all of the PNDF in ActionScript 3 are load variables, load movie, load XML, load vars, or stuff like sound and net stream. So the Flash video can carry media data in the ActionScript message format, and it can carry stuff like file size, data rate, and stuff like that. There are a couple of editors to change those values. If you have something like metadata from an object which has a number and a certain value, you can change the type and the value, and then you have stuff like execution on metadata. The same works for music. The other function which is very interesting in my point of view, it's XML load. It's usually used to get application data via an XML file. So I have a little example. So, geht das jetzt nicht? Das ist natürlich scheiße.
Wir müssen umstellen, dass das Fenster offen lassen. Wenn das so ein Pop-up auf, und soll das Pop-up offen ist, das tun wir jetzt nicht. Ja.
Okay.
Das ist gar nicht so.
Ist das 9? Ah. So that's a file from CNN where I supply some XML stuff for my page, so I can like use the Flash movie from CNN to have my own data. The other example, yeah, of course there's also, of course there's scripting possible through that. Or another nice example, which is my favorite actually. It's Nokia presenting OpenMoko. Yeah, that's the XML stuff. Boring. Yeah, forging HTTP requests is another thing you can do with Flash. All our versions, they could directly not supply headers like that. They changed it in that way that you are not allowed to change, for example, the referrer or other headers. But if you supply like the full referrer as a variable, then it works still. And I think it works with most other headers. Boring. ActionScript 3 sockets. I don't know if you know about DNS rebinding attacks. Martin Jons and Nakana Toko built a very, very nice example for that. So the idea is to use Flash to do port scanning. I don't know if it works here. Okay, doesn't work. Hey. Okay, but the idea behind that is that you rebind DNS so that you can access the local network and do scans on the ports and get data back. Another thing which we found, it's a design flaw in the socket handling. It's a security event which is thrown when you try to access a port, and the security event error tells you that directly thrown when the port is closed, but it takes a couple of seconds if it's open. So it's like a very, very basic port scanner. Yeah, but the other example is much nicer. I supply the slides and all the URLs so you can test the stuff on your own. This is actually fixed in the latest beta of the Flash player. It doesn't work anymore, but our example still works. Other random examples, for example, a couple of weeks ago, someone found a way to upload a cross-domain XML to Google Docs, and so there was a possibility to steal data from the Google accounts by that because you could use Flash on that domain. Another nice issue is that the get-URL function itself is vulnerable. So there was an exploit on RSnake's website called hackers.org, and he supplied a little file called xss.swf, and by supplying some a variable with 00 and then the JavaScript payload, people were able to exploit this exploit. The other example is the unmasking of proxies with Flash, so that so even if now someone uses Tor or whatever, you can use Flash to reveal his real IP. Some words on Air. Air is still beta, but in the moment there are a couple of weird things possible. For example, if you are able to apply a cross-site scripting inside the application data, you can have file system access via JavaScript functions. And you can even change all files during runtime. So the next time when the user is using this application, you can supply your own stuff. There are also a couple of AMF parser bugs which are exploitable. But it's still beta, so I think they will launch it end of the year. For ActionScript 2, there are a couple of tools for disassembling and decompiling. For ActionScript 3, there is no real decompiler. It's just there's something you can build on your own using Tamarine, and it has produces some sort of pseudocode. It's enough to do an audit on ActionScript 3 files. But it's not that as nice as mtask for Flare for using ActionScript 2. I'm mostly done. There are two talks related to Flash at the upcoming CCC Congress. One is about, or one is called Unusual Web Bugs, and it's about header stuff and rebinding. Yakuza is releasing a tool for doing DNS rebinding attacks with Flash, and Nicolas Canas, the guy who developed mtask and Hex, he is giving a talk on Hex and Hex ASM. It's a tool, it's a possibility to natively write ActionScript bytecode. What we will see in the next couple of months is some more sandbox breaking ideas, code analyzers, and there are a couple of bugs in the RTMP protocol itself, and there will be some release on that too. And the wiki is like flashstack.org if you are interested in more stuff. And I also supplied like a couple of links so you can look on your own if you are interested in. Okay, I'm done. And I'm sorry that I was so confused. So there are questions?
So you're talking about the PHP global, register globals kind of attack that you were doing against Flash. So I was wondering, the Flash decompilers that you have, would that allow you to basically scan Flash files for that kind of vulnerability? Okay.
It only works in an ActionScript too, and if you use Flare as an ActionScript decompiler, it's quite easy to find and to exploit. It's just you can do it by static analysis. More questions?
Cheers. Have you looked at fuzzing any of the functions that you can find in the runtimes?
No. I just did everything by hand. So don't do any fuzzing by now. Actually, in the moment, we are more looking into AMF itself, or into RTMP. It's like the protocol which is used by Adobe for real-time communication, but not on ActionScript native functions. Anything else? Okay, thank you.